recording of today's class. Perfect. All right. So today you get to decide the orientation of your picture. So I am going to do mine in portrait today, which is vertical. If you wanted to shift yours to the side and do landscape, you could. But I'm going to do mine vertically in portrait. And one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to mix in orange color. So I want folks to grab, if you were sent a brilliant red, I want you to grab brilliant red. If you did not receive brilliant red, you can use burnt sienna. This will give you kind of like a darker mustardy orange. I would say if you have crimson or bright brilliant red, use those as a first choice. And then you're going to grab a yellow. And I believe the yellow that I sent you was ochre. If you received another yellow, let me know. But I'm going to use yellow ochre and brilliant red. So whatever orange, whatever yellow and red you have, you're going to use to make this combination. And you're going to do it the same kind of equal parts as that I do. So to make an orange, it's like 85% yellow with a tiny touch of red. Even it's like 10% red, like a little touch of red goes a long way. So we're all going to make an orange that you like. So this is the color of your pumpkin. So take a minute to mix orange. Now, one of the questions I got last class is, Megan, should I just make a lot of it? Because they're having like, there's gonna be a big pumpkin here. And you can make, if you want to make, I usually say 1 dollop of the yellow. If you wanted to do 2 dollops, we'll use it. So you have one consistent color. That's absolutely fine. You don't need to use all of your paint, but you can use a bit if you want, because there's a lot of yellow on this. And then I just did a tiny touch of red right there. And if you wanted to use a palette knife to mix the colors, you could. We just had a conversation briefly about when do you use a palette knife. If you wanted to use a palette knife to mix colors, you could. Because we are using our big brush, I'm just going to have us mix the color with the big brush because we're going to use it. So I'm going to get my big brush wet. And everyone received a large flat-headed brush or a large round-tipped brush. Either of those brushes will work great for this next step. So we're just mixing in orange. So we all got this. If anyone has questions about coloring, please let me know. I'm going to add a little bit more red to mine. Imagine that. All right. A little bit more red. But this is where you can pick the orange that works for you. What color do you want your pumpkin to be? Now, if you want to do a green pumpkin, you could do a green pumpkin. If you wanted to do a white pumpkin, you could do a white pumpkin. If you want to do a yellowy mustard pumpkin color, that could be kind of fun. All right. So I'm just mixing this well. If anybody ever wants to try getting one of those palette knives and mixing colors that way, you totally can. And what I'm doing is I'm stirring it with my brush and I'm kind of wiping some of it off. So one of the most important things is that making sure that the red is mixed all the way in. And then I'm kind of wiping off the brush a little bit so it's not too goopy with paint, but you can still see it has orange on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the outline of pumpkin. So I'm going to have you find like the middle of the canvas from the top to the bottom, to the left to the right. But put your finger in the middle. And then I'm going to have you bring your finger down a little bit. And I'm just going to go over. So the center of my pumpkin is going to be a little off-centered. And I'm going to put a little dot. And the pumpkin is going to go all the way off to the right and all the way off to the left. And it's going to look, it's going to come down in the middle a little bit. And it's going to arch up and then come down. This is where the stem or the middle of the pumpkin is. This doesn't have to be in the middle of the canvas. You can kind of shift it over. You can decide the positioning. Nice. And I'm just doing an outline here. And it doesn't have to be filled in all the way. We're going to add a lot of colors. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a little bit of shaping. So from where this Pumpkin is shaped. It comes down where the stem is. We're going to come from the bottom and we're going to do a bending bow out to the right and down. This is the pumpkin rinds. This is the shaping of the pumpkin, these rounded bellows. And we're just going to do 2 in the middle. This is kind of where we're starting to shape our pumpkin. So the one on the left is going to bend to the left like the pumpkin is rounding. And the one on the right. So we're just doing the 2 middle. This is like the kind of the front panel of the pumpkin. And I'm just doing an outline in here just to make it a little bit more solidified. Nice. And then this is the easy part. We're going to do 1 more. If you want to do 2 more, you can. But see how this is like a big space over here? If you're doing 2 more, you can basically kind of, I'll just do 1 more. This is what I did in the last class. But you're basically going to come directly in the middle of this and kind of bow down like you're filling this entire middle space. So I'm just going to come in. And see how I'm creating that rounded pumpkin shape, equal parts. And see how this is kind of bending and kind of curling back in on the bottom. That sometimes helps visually. So just take a minute to give your pumpkin a little bit of an outline. This is just giving our object a little bit of shape and a little bit of form. Nice. We're going to let this dry. So I'll give everyone a minute just to kind of play with these lines. If you do a line that you don't like, let it dry, and then you can use your white paint to paint over it. So if you do something here that you don't like, don't worry. There are so many ways to fix a line. But lean back in your chair and make sure you got the pumpkin shape right. Very important part. All right, and then I'm going to clean my big brush when I'm done. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause. We're not going to fill the pumpkin in yet. We're actually going to go to the top. We're going to do our polka dots. In these classes, I jump around so different areas of the canvas can dry so we can complete the project within, 2 hours. So thank you for acknowledging and my method to my madness here, but there is intent behind pausing. So I'm going to clean off my brush really well. The big brush. You want to get all the paint off that if you can. And we're going to flip to our polka dots as our next step. And if your lines on your pumpkin are perfect, don't worry. There's just rough lines to get us started. Wonderful. All right. So we're going to slowly transition to doing the polka dots next, which is really quite fun. So I'm going to have everybody open up your black paint container, paint tube, and you're probably going to need 2 thumbnails worth of black on your canvas, on your palette, on your plate. So do two good squirts of the black. And what we're going to do to make these polka dots, as I was brainstorming, I'm like, it would take us 2 hours to paint 30 polka dots on this background. So what are we going to do? So we're going to get creative. And we did this in the last class and it worked well. We're going to use the top of our green as a stamp. So grab that green container. We'll use green after. And we're going to use this circle on the top of the cap to stamp our polka dots. Now I have a method to our madness on how we're going to do that. But the first step is put black on your plate. You can see I have black right here.
She got a lot of black.
And then you can fill the cap. So mine's I'm using a more watery black, but you're going to have, I'm not even going to use all this black. It's quite a bit, but just filling like the rim of the cap works. And what you're going to do is we're going to do the first row first, and we're going to go nice and slow because once you have a pattern, you're in good shape. So I want you to start at the top and just do 1 dot. And if it's partial, if it's not filled in, don't worry about that because we can fill it in after. So go back, maybe get a little bit more paint. And then I want you to give a little bit of a space in between for the next dot. Now, whatever that space is, I want you to do an equal part space, and we're just going right across the top. And we're going to fill these in after. So don't worry about the gaps in color right now. But go back and dip and get more black as you need it. I just stuck my black cap in my orange. Don't do that either. All right. So we're all doing our first row together. Now, I do not have perfectly even spaces in between each of these. It's all for fun. But what you're going to do is for the second row, you're going to go in between those. And this is where you're creating a pattern. So the goal is for the line to be straight. And you can fill these in after. And I'm going and dipping and getting more paint as I need it. If there's any drips, just kind of like wipe off that paint a little bit. And then if you have, you could put like half circles over on the sides, like if the wallpaper is kind of continuing. So we're going to take the next few minutes just to do this rinse and repeat pattern, and take your time. This can be relaxing. This is fun and different. We don't usually do stuff like this. Let's just enjoy it. Go nice and slow. If there's any questions, please let me know. You all are doing great. I hear TV. I'm looking for it. Here, I think somebody just joined. Awesome. Welcome, Gabby and Sharon. All right. So if anybody just joined, we made an orange using, 90% yellow with a touch of red, and we did some basic pumpkin shapes. One big expanded large scale pumpkin on the bottom. And then we're making small black dots using the top of our green container across the top in this pattern shape. And in the last class, I did go in and fill some of these dots. As long as you have the rounded circle, you can go in and fill those. But I love this like vintage look. And this slow approach, it's one of the relaxing parts of art. And I'm doing little half circles kind of on the edges where there's overlap. And if you guys like this, guys and girls, if you guys like these like half filled in circles, it kind of has a vintage element to it. It's kind of cute. I left some unfilled last time. I don't know. I'm going to just figure out what I want to do. I might leave some of them unfilled, so maybe fill them in. We'll see. But you all can make that choice. You could get really crazy and use another color to fill inside of the black if you wanted to. That could be really fun. It'd be like a yellow or you could even do blue. That could be really cool. Doing a blue pattern in some of these polka dots. Ooh, that's really thinking outside the box for a Sunday. But blue and green, or sorry, blue and orange are really beautiful complementary colors. So that could look really neat. A little bit of blue tucked in. And then we could put a little bit of blue in the bow too. That'd be pretty. But art is all about being inspired. And I'm inspired to maybe add a little bit of blue to these polka dots. Who knows? but it's a non-risk decision. I'm going nice and slow.
Megan, are we going all the way down to the top of the pumpkin?
Yes,
Looks like.
ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
We are. We're going all the way down.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Oh, that dot was a little too high. See that? Even the teacher makes mistakes sometimes. That's all right. I got too excited about my blue. Yeah, we're going to go all the way down to the top of the pumpkin. Don't worry too much as you get really close to the top of the pumpkin, because we're going to put like leaves and the stem down there. So you don't have to fit it perfectly. Like I'll probably just do like a little bit of a half dot here. But this was a really fun way to create some polka dots. Sometimes it's fun to use elements that you have around your home to paint with. A lot of artists don't paint with just brushes. They use other objects like different plastics and forks and like anything that we've all seen imprints with leaves. That's another form of printing or block printing per se. So there's so many things you can do to create things with different mediums, of course, with different types of objects. So brushes are not the end all be all. So I encourage you, as you continue to practice your creativity in your own ways, consider using a different tool. And that could even be cooking. It could be anything. Just try using a different tool every once in a while. All right, I think I'm getting pretty close here with my dots. I am going to have us fill our dots. So we are intentionally doing the black dots now, so that area dries. This is the area that takes the longest to dry because it's kind of thick. So what I'm going to do is once I'm done with my main forms, I'm actually going to take this whole thing and I'm just going to kind of swish it around the top of my water glass. Just to kind of get like the first coat of paint off of it. And then I'm just going to use a small paper towel to wipe off the top of the green paint. The black paint off the top. And this is also giving our black just a chance to dry. But how convenient that that little cap was able to help us out with our form today. It's fun to be spontaneous. All right. For our paint class here on a Sunday. Perfect day to paint. All right. So I'm going to get a little crazy. I am going to experiment. Give me a thumbs up. Did I send blue to folks for today's class? I might not have. So guys, give me a thumbs up. Did I send blue to your kits? Or give me a thumbs down? No, I didn't think so. Okay, I'm just gonna fill my dots in with black since nobody else might have blue. I'm just gonna use black today. I'm gonna use one of my smaller brushes. So this is a 2/0 fraction brush. You could use any brush you want. I'm just filling in these just by doing some circular rotations. Filling in each of these dots. Sometimes there's thick paint that gets trapped. I like to kind of wipe the thick paint off and put it back on my plate, because the thick paint will take longer to dry. I'm sure many of you put that together. But I'll keep an eye on the clock. We're just going to go through and fill in these dots and just wipe off any extra black paint from the dotting from our stamping method. And any black paint, I'm just spinning off of my brush and putting it right back on my plate. If anyone has any questions, please let me know, but I'm super excited to see. Now the elements of our canvas came together pretty quickly today. Today's inspiration was probably like, it's like a 4 out of 5, 4 out of 10 difficulty. You all can do this, no problem. I might even give it a 3. I think you all are pretty talented. All right. And I'm not sure if there's spots left in our December class, but we're painting candy canes. We're painting a beautiful sage green background with some candy canes on it and a really nice kind of design. I thought that'd be fun and different. And if you weren't able to get into the December class and you're interested in joining, send me an email and I'm happy to include you and send you the Zoom link. You just need to bring your own supplies. So I try to keep these classes as inclusive as possible. So if you wanted to attend, please let me know. But I am just working my way around these dots. I have not yet selected inspirations for the new year. So if there's something you're interested in painting, please let me know. I did recently paint a Canadian geese that I did in another class. It was absolutely so much fun and gorgeous. So if anybody's interested in doing that, we could do that. But open to any other ideas. So you can use the chat window if you have anything you're inspired to paint, or if there's certain mediums that you're interested in, or other, creative activities we could hold. Please let me know.
Were we washing the orange off the large brush? Aren't we going to use it again?
Please wash the orange off. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And I don't know when the January or the February class would be, but if it's probably after Valentine's, so maybe the January class could do something Valentine's.
Ooh, that could be a good idea. Excellent suggestion. I want to say, let me pull it up right now. I have my calendar right here. February's class is the 16th and 19th of next year. So it's just after Valentine's Day. And then the January classes are being held on the 12th and the 15th of January. So those have not been posted yet, but they will be soon. All right, good suggestions. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I did a really cute Valentine's Day one. I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't know if it was with this group last year or not. Oh, maybe I did a Valentine's Day gnome. I don't know if that was with this class, but that was really fun.
Do you think cardinals would be too hard to paint?
Cardinals? I love cardinals.
Yes.
So with the right mindset, birds can be difficult to paint, as long as folks are just mindful of like how big you want the birds to be. I think cardinals would be really fun because we haven't done a ton of birds in these classes, and I think it could be a good way to mix it in. So I think that's a good option for next year for sure. I could definitely coach the class through teaching those details. Good one. We could do one cardinal, we could do two cardinals. One would probably be good because then we could paint, for me, when I paint birds, I want to spend a lot of time on the details. That's an important component for me. That's a component that I would build in for each of you, is to like play with the detail on those birds. So that's a good suggestion. I'm just using my brush and kind of wisping around some of these circles, wiping off black paint and filling them in. So I'm sure many of you are doing the same. And then I have one missing circle. So make sure there's no missing circles or spaces. I forgot one, almost did. And my circles are not perfect. I'll hold this up close just to show y'all. This is not perfection. This is like, we're going for it. It's gonna look good on the wall. All right. So work on those circles. I'm gonna keep an eye on the clock. We basically want those to dry as quickly as possible. So kind of look and see how much of, if there's black goop on these, try to wipe some of it off if you can. And then you can, after tonight's class, you can always scoop some of the black paint back into your container if you need to. But I'll take a look at the chat window really quick. I think there was some questions. Nature scenes. Yay, awesome. Perfect. I'm gonna look around the room. There's Miss Melody. Kathy's in the zone. Kathy, you're always in the zone. I appreciate that. There's Miss Sharon. Sharon, great to see you. Sharon's got a big smile on her face today. All right. It's a great day to be here. All right. Kira's painting away, I'm sure. Miss Linda's in the zone. All right, everybody's doing so well. I'm going to keep it on the clock. I'm going to give everybody 2 solid minutes to work on these circles. I feel like some of you may have more than I have in the last class. Some people placed them very densely next to each other, and some people had them more spread out, which means there's less. So let's see. I had how many across the top? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So some of you might have put like 10 across the top or 12, and that means you have a whole lot more circles than I do, right? But take your time. And the reason we wanted to get those circles on, a little method behind the madness, is that we need them to dry so we can put the leaves on top and we could do the stem. Those are all layers in the foreground because the polka dotted background, polka dotted wallpaper is in the background. So everything else layered on top. All right. So our goal is to refine our circles and let them dry. Now we're using acrylic paint. The black paint that I sent to you it's a high quality paint that I switched to many months ago. It's called Reeves. It will dry and it will look shiny. So it may be dry, but it may not be dry. So this paint has like a shiny residue, which is really kind of cool. It's a really fun, higher quality paint. It's not like a flat paint like the other ones that I sent. So mine's drying. You can see even with the pumpkin, this is actually a really good example. With the pumpkin, it's kind of shiny in spots, which means it might be still a little bit wet, but it has a little bit of a shiny tint to it. So as your black is drying, I'll continue to the next step for whoever's ready for it. We're just going to fill in our pumpkin together. So you're going to go back and you're going to grab the big brush again. The reason I had you clean your brush because I didn't want the paint to stick to it. It's important that you clean your brush in between steps so paint doesn't linger on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our orange paint and we're going to start to fill in each of these panels. And I'm going to use a little water on my brush and I'm going to be playful with how I fill these panels. So by dipping my brush in a little bit of water, I'm going to get a little bit of a lighter transparency. So I want you to be playful. You could paint your pumpkin entirely orange and you could paint it flat down and it would, be a normal pumpkin. But one of the things I want you to play with in this next step is try bringing in a little bit of water. Try creating some lightness in the middle of the panels. I want to be able to see those pumpkin rinds that you painted. And the way I'm filling in this pumpkin is rounded to the shape of the pumpkin. So I'm not just doing vertical brush strokes. I'm taking a little bit of water on my brush with a little bit of paint, and I'm just following these lines. And you can play with using the wide side of the brush, and you could play with spinning to the side of your brush. But I try to see a lighter orange and try to see a darker orange, and that will kind of bring your pumpkin to life just a little bit. See how there's some lighter and darker tones? It's because I'm using some water, using some paint. And you cannot mess this part up, I promise. We're just following the rounded ridge lines of the pumpkin. Dipping your brush in a little bit of water. I'm using the same paints that you are. A little water will really give it some movement. So if it seems thick to you, when you apply it, dip your brush in water and do a solid moving fluid brush stroke from the top of your pumpkin, rounding from the stem all the way down the side. Smooth brush strokes. You can fill in all those white nooks and crannies. You can see how there's more water right here. Pretty neat. But it's just kind of slowing down and just seeing what happens. And a little bit of water, a little paint. And you can try to make like the middle of the panel a little bit lighter. Put a little bit of a darker, a little bit more paint, less water here. But follow the shape of the pumpkin. Try not to do vertical brush strokes. Try to do rounded brush strokes as you fill in this element. And I'm putting a little bit of paint. I'll show you how much paint I'm using on my brush. It is not very much at all. So I have my orange right here, and I'm literally just taking a little bit. Look at that. That's how much paint I'm using on my brush. And I'm dipping my brush in water with the paint on the tip, kind of wiping off some of the water residue. And I'm just coming in and I'm just starting right on that ridge line. And then I know there's plenty of paint on my brush. So I'm going to go back and get a little bit more water. You always want to wipe off the drop on the top of the brush tips. And then you can do some nice, smooth, rounded strokes. So I'm going nice and slow. And I'm using the water. I'm going back and dipping and getting more water. That's totally optional if you don't want to use as much water. For me, I love experimenting with it because I love playing with the pigments. It's probably why I'm enjoying watercolor so much as well. But it's fun because you don't have to mix a lighter orange. And you can see I'm doing just a little bit of a darker orange near this ridge line here. That will help it blend in a little more easily. So you can just make it a little darker towards that line. And then the middle of the pumpkin can be a little, I could just do a soft, gentle brush stroke to reduce any brush stroke lines. So with the water, you can see more brush strokes, but if you do a nice smooth line up from the top to the bottom, it'll help blend it in. Some of you were like, oh, we're just painting a pumpkin today. It'll be really quick and easy. We're just painting it orange, right? Surprise, surprise. We're going to get there a little bit a different way. But any way that you want to do it, you can go for it. But you all are pros. You've done this before. All right. So again, I'm just doing a little bit of the orange paint, dip my brush in a little bit of water, and watch how I just slowly fill this in ever so gently. And I'm doing rounded brush strokes, the shape of the pumpkin. And I put a little bit of a darker line in the middle. That came out pretty cool. Just as adding more ridge. Pumpkins are not perfectly round. They're not perfectly smooth. So if you wanted to add any, you can use this darker orange. This orange is like a contrasting color. Feel free to do that. You can add some kind of rough marks, some texture. You can use the flat side of your big brush. You can add some texture, like even lines, like texture to your pumpkin to make it look more realistic. That looks really cool. I didn't do that in the last class. You can add thin lines if you wanted to, just to add some texture. Anybody wants to add any of those funky warts, you could do that. But I'm just adding a little texture, just little lines. And I'm just using the orange paint. So the regular orange paint's just showing up a little darker because in some of these areas I've watered it down a little bit. So it's using a single thing of paint, but you're just kind of manipulating what you have. And again, everybody's paying attention to your brush strokes. So that it really helps shape the pumpkin. It's not a flat pumpkin. It's really becoming more rounded on our canvases today. All right. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. We are patiently letting our black dots dry right now, which is perfect. I'm going to grab a little bit of paint, a little bit more water, pardon me, to fill in this other area. This is where you can all take a deep breath. Inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Do that nice and slowly. Will help you relax. So try doing that maybe 3 times. So nice. Now I'm just rounding the shape of my pumpkin. I'm coming up from the bottom. It's another tip to try, coming up from the bottom and rounding towards the top. It's just a different way to, you can see a brush stroke kind of happen. So I have a little bit of a glare, but you all can see it's a little bit wet right there. But you can see I'm using like lighter tones and darker tones of orange. It's quite fun. And this, what we're doing right now, is not the end all be all. So if you wanted, so for me, I'm making this side of the pumpkin a little bit darker right here. You'll notice things. You know, we could spend 2 hours painting this pumpkin. We won't, but there's plenty of other details for us to consider here along the way. But it's fun to kind of take our time on some of these elements. And I'm going to use the water to my advantage just to blend this in. All right, so I have one more panel. I'm almost there. I've been taking my time, so some of you might be done. Some of you, I think many of you I think you've learned to take your time too, so that's good. I don't ever want people to feel rushed in these classes. This is time for you. Again, if you have any ideas on things in the future that you want to paint, I thank you so much. I welcome any of your ideas. We had some good ones so far. Thank you for sharing those. All right. And again, we would not be here today without our friends at AARP Vermont. A big thanks for them having us again. All right. So my pumpkin has come to life. You can see I have different tones of orange. Some of you may or may not like that water technique. If you don't want to do the water technique, you can use at any time like a little bit of white to kind of soften the pumpkin. And create some different, some highlights. For me, I was doing that naturally using the white today. We can come back to the pumpkin and make some modifications. However, we want this to dry so we can move on to some other areas. So lean back in your chair. I'll check in with you all here in just a minute. Don't forget to enjoy your tea or your water. I haven't stuck my brush in it yet. That's a good thing. No casualties. No paint on my shirt yet either. Woohoo. All right, so I'm going to unpin myself and I'm going to check in with each of you. How did the polka dotting go? How do your pumpkins look? I'm very excited to see your work. If anybody wants to turn on your camera, hold your painting up like this so I can see it. I would love to see how you're doing. Melody, you have about 100 dots. You went through that pretty quickly. Well done. Jan, oh, there's Jan's. Awesome. So Jan, you can keep one pumpkin. If you wanted to tuck in a couple other small pumpkins on the side, you could do that too. Claudia, you have like the most precise polka dotted pattern I've seen in a long time. That looks nice. Kim, everybody did great with their polka dots and the pumpkins. Oh, Melinda, your pumpkin looks awesome. Linda, nice job. Good shaping. Sally, great job. Woohoo. Oh, there we go. Nice job. There's Sharon's. Kathy, so many dots, right, Kathy? So many dots. I know.
I added some sparkle to my paint.
Ooh. And your dots?
I don't know on my dots and my pumpkin because I was kind of feeling Christmassy.
Oh,
So it does
yay.
have I mixed some metallic that you use for Halloween, you know, it's real fine. And I thought, well, see how it comes out, you know,
Can
so
you see it?
it's more, yeah, I did purple on the black,
Oh
the
my
purple
gosh.
metallic
So fun.
glitter, you know.
I might do, I was just talking to AARP. I might do like include like a glitter sparkle for like January. or even if I can get some in time for December, like sending everybody a little bit of a glitter paint to like add as an accent, it'd be really fun. Cool. Thank you so much. I love that you added like a metallic in there. What a good idea. And I just saw Miss who just held hers up. I just missed her. She might have had to drop off. Oh, Sharon, I saw yours when you were holding it up. It looks really nice. I'm like, where'd she go? With the purple shirt. All right, Sharon, nice job. So many circles, right? And there's Miss Lisa's. So many circles, ladies. Take some time, finish those circles. I see you. I feel you. I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time. Give everyone some time. Because we need those circles done and we need them to dry so we can put on our leaves and our stem. So this is what I'll tell folks based on where you're at. The next thing that we're going to do together as the group is the bow, because the bow can go on the pumpkin. So make sure your pumpkin's filled in, which many of us did. Check. Make sure those dots are filled in. We don't want the dots to dry. So pumpkin and dots is where we're in for that. And as we're doing that, I'll take a look at the AARP site to see if there's any openings available for the upcoming events. Vermont events. I'm not sure if they're still open or not. I'm sure they're sold out at this point, but we can just check while folks are working on those dots. Okay, let's see here. So funny, some days I can find the events on here easily and some days I can't. Member benefits.
The 8th is full. I did find that one.
December is full.
December 8th is, what's the other date?
The other date is,
It's a Sunday.
yep, 11th. Yep, Sunday the 11th. Let me see here. I am patiently trying to find the events. They might have moved it on their site. Where is it?
Megan, it's easier if you do search by town or city and put in a zip code. It shortens the list quite a bit and it's easier to find them.
Vermont. Thank you.
They're both full. They're all full.
They're both
November,
full.
December.
Yeah.
I mean, December, yeah, they're both full.
Okay, well, thank you. That will save me a few minutes here trying to find the link. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So as soon as the January, I have to select inspirations for January and beyond. We'll do that in just a moment. I'll do that later on. I love the idea of incorporating a metallic or a sparkle though. That'd be fun. I also have been, I felt doing like a fun, like glow in the dark or neon one could be fun and different too, just to mix up the colors. All right. So we will slowly shift as folks are dotting. We're slowly shift to doing the bow outline next. So I'm going to go ahead and spotlight my screen and we'll do this bow outline next as a group. So we're going to be using our black paint. And if you're still finishing up your dots, feel free to do that because we definitely need those to be dry. But if you're done your dots, you can move forward with me. I'm going to have you grab a small brush of your choice. So you can grab one of the smallest brushes I sent you. You could use like a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, or 5. Any of those like long tip brushes will work just fine. Let's see what brush this is right here. This is a number 2 brush. This brush will be fine. And we're going to get our brush a little bit wet. And we're going to use black paint. And we're going to outline our bow. So the bow is going to be half on, half off of the pumpkin. So go ahead and get a little bit of paint on your brush. And we're going to do the center of the bow. So the middle knot of the bow. And it's going to be right here. You're just going to do a small rectangle right at the top of the pumpkin where the stem is. And you're just doing a black outline. You can always change the shape of this. And the next is your bow. So we're doing the left loop and the right loop. So with a little paint on your brush, you can think about the direction of your bow and in the inspiration, the bow's a little floppy down. I'm gonna do the bow a little higher today, just to make it look a little more cheery. So it's gonna kind of come straight out with a straight line. You can make your bow any size, any shape you want. This bow is definitely different than my one that I did on Thursday. I'm just having fun. But then you can kind of come above. I want your bow to kind of overlap the top of the pumpkin if you can. I have a big cherry bow, and then I'm just gonna just do a thin coat of the black, and then I'll do these tails hanging down. And the tails, they're a little bit diagonal. You can kind of turn them a little bit. I'm just being pretty whimsical and fun with my bow shape. The ends are a little pointy. The middle of the bow ties kind of come up a little bit like a rounded arch. You can perfect this. I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. We're going to change the shape a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to get those black outlines down, do them nice and thin. You don't need to kind of do a double coat, but we're going to fill the bow entirely with white as our next step. So again, we're letting the polka dots up the top dry. We're going to fill our bow in with white paint. And in the last class, we only did 1 coat of white paint. I might do 2 coats for this class. We can see how it goes. But when you have your bow outlined, and there's no rush if you're still working on your bow, your dots, don't worry about it. But I'm going to grab some white paint and I'm going to start to fill in the bow entirely. So we're going to paint on top of the pumpkin, inside of the bow. So the bow is white and it stands out. Because then we're going to do a really fun checkered pattern on top of it. So I'm using my big brush to fill in the bow. I'm making sure my brush is clean and like fairly dry. I want the white paint to really stick on these background colors. Try to keep your white like away from the edges right now because the black paint is still wet, but you can kind of work your way close to the edge and your black paint will dry pretty quickly. And if you happen to get like a little bit of a mucky gray in areas, that's okay. We just need a nice solid coat of white paint. And I'm using the big brush. And this is where you just take your time. There's a lot of steps in this painting today, but they're all fairly easy. We all know how to fill something in, right? It's not like painting a tree or something like that. And then this polka dot's gonna get covered too. Imagine that. And you can use the narrow side of your big brush to kind of go along the side of the bow. So it's nice and clean on the edge. So it's fun in these classes to figure out how you can manipulate your brushes for them to work for you. Because there's a lot you can do with just a few brushes. Been writing a lot of content recently around coaching people on how to like host their own parties and how to teach classes like this. And one of the things I've been writing about is like the number of brushes you need for a class. And I include 5 to 10, based on the type of class, but it's so funny because as long as you have like 5 good brushes, you're in a pretty good shape, based on the hobbyist painting that we're doing today. But you just need a well-rounded assortment and then you're in good shape. And just knowing how to manipulate those brushes, well, it's a part of the craft. It's knowing how to use something to create what you want it to, or how to apply paint in a certain way. So I'm painting over some of these black lines. It's okay. My white paint's painting on top of some of the black. We're gonna outline the bow at the end anyway, so that's not a big deal. And the white paint is really gonna stand out on the bow. It's gonna look like a sore thumb. It's supposed to, but just get that coat on. If the black is wet anywhere, you can just go around that area and come back to it. If you wanted to downsize to a smaller brush, you could at any point as you're filling in this bow. So for me, I might grab a smaller brush to fill in that small rectangle in the middle. Because I'm using the big brush right now. So I'm going to pivot. I'm going to clean the big brush off, and I'm just going to grab a smaller size brush. I feel like one of the things in these classes, if I don't remind you to use a different brush, you would probably use one brush the entire class. So I'm here to remind you to, especially when you're doing details like on a tree or on leaves, it's good to switch brushes because you'll get a different texture. It'll kind of add a little bit of variety to your painting if you use different brushes or techniques. So that's why, again, and in this case, we're doing it for the detail in some of these smaller areas, but you get what I'm saying. It's good to change it when you need it.
We're putting it on thick, right? Because otherwise the orange and black shows through the white.
Exactly. So mine, if I bring this really close, you can still see it through, which is
Yeah.
fine. We're just doing one coat right now, and then we're going to do another coat of white on top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. It helps tremendously to have this white be super bright for the final result. That's why I'm going to have folks do a second coat. But doing a single coat now, letting it dry, and then doing a second coat on top after will make a world of difference. But for me, I'm just making sure I get everywhere first. So I have this black mark right here. I'm going to just try to cover this up. I had a big black goop happen. Mistakes happen. I'm just going to let that dry, and I'll paint white on top of that after over here. Just doing some nice basic coverage first. But filling in the entire bow is important. Again, don't worry about the black lines. These are just guidelines for the bow. We can always kind of put those back in. I'm just going to paint over a couple of them for right now. All right. So I'll give everyone a minute or two just to fill in the bow. We're going to come back to the bow, so if it's not perfect, don't worry. We'll do a second coat. I have a little bit of a gray muck over here happening. Again, not worried about it. And as we paint, we do want to just keep our brushes rinsed. Again, this paint is thick, and if it dries, it's like you could lose the brush. So just keep those brushes clean as recommended. These are obviously your brushes that you're using. They're not mine any longer. So they're all yours. So take care of them. I'm sure many of you are having quite a collection here. All right. Perfect. So I'm going to be patient, and my bow is not done. I'm acknowledging that, but it's drying. And as that's drying, and that's filling in, we're going to shift to doing the stem next. So I'm taking a moment to clean my brushes. Sometimes folks even like take your brushes out of your water cup, and you can kind of put them on your paper towel so you can see what brushes are wet. It's kind of a fun thing to do. It's just kind of like wiping them off a little bit. So today I've been using the large flat-headed brush. I used the detailed brush, the 2/0, and I've been using my number 2 the most today. So sometimes it's fun to say, okay, well, what brushes have I been using today? And everyone's has a little bit different of a brushes from a numbered perspective. To remind you, there's small gold numbers on the sides of these. So if you hear me call out a 4, it's where I'm calling the number from. It's not bingo, but we should play bingo maybe some. That'd be fun too. All right. So we're going to shift to our green next, and we're going to do our stem and our leaves as an outline. I would say my black dots are like 90% dry. So anywhere that's wet, I'm just gonna take the corner of a paper towel and I'm just gonna like blot it. Because this is just extra paint. And you only need to do that for the dots, like on the bottom half of this background. Just gonna use a clean paper towel. I think I'm in good shape. I'm pretty close. There's a little, and if your dots are still really wet, you can just hang out and wait for them to dry and then join me. But I'm just gonna do this to keep us moving along because there are plenty more details for us to do. But I'm going to use green paint, and this is going to be a really easy next step. I think today's class is easy tone here. All right, so we're going to use a small brush of your choice. I would say use a 2, 3, 4, or 5. I just have a 2 handy. This is pretty small. I would, if I had like a 3 or 4, I'd probably use a 3 or 4 or a 5, just because the bristles are a little longer. But we're going to do the green stem next. And in the last class, my stem was huge. I'm going to try to do my stem a little smaller this class, even though it worked. But the stem is going to be right in the middle of the bow, basically, and it's going to have a little bit of an arc to it. So it's going to be a little smaller towards the bottom, and it's just going to be a little bit more, it's going to be kind of rounded on the top. And you're just going to do an outline for your green stem, and if you wanted to fill it in, you could too. But we're just adding in a green stem. It's good just to start with like one size stem and then reflect, saying, is my stem too big or is it too small? Does the bottom of the stem need to be wider? So these are all things you could just change, but if you start smaller, you can always make it bigger. But if you start with a big stem, it's hard to make it smaller. So I did a tiny stem. I have to figure out, I think I'm going to need to do a bigger stem. My pumpkin is so big. I think I'm just going to make it a little taller. It's a little longer. There. Because I'm sure many of you have done the whole pumpkin thing, and pumpkin stems are so long typically. I feel like they're so long. Or if they're broken, they're really short, right? But like when you go to a pumpkin patch, they're really long. All right. They're awful rough on your hands too. I remember that from this year. All right, so my stem's a little longer. I'm okay with my stem. I'm just gonna let it dry. Think about it.
Is it going to be outlined in black? Like
Yes, ma'am. Yep. Yep, we're gonna outline it in black, and we're also gonna add some white detail as well. Yep, exactly. And we're gonna do the same steps for our green leaves. So just to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit, we're gonna add a green stem, and we're gonna add leaves. And then once those are all dry, we'll do some black outlining together. Good questions. And you might need a second coat of paint on your green stem. I can see some polka dots coming through. Again, this is all a process. So because we're layering in, you know, we did that background first, we're going to see things through. But you could just do some small leaves. So I'm going to just do maybe a small leaf, just kind of like tucked in here. I'm just doing outlines, so you can kind of have them come out and come up if you want. They can be any shapes that you want. I'm just being playful with what I might want them to be for today. So these are just some fun outlines. I can figure out, well, do I want it to come out a little bigger? Maybe this one can come out a little bit bigger. And I can lean back in my chair. Maybe there's another one that's coming in here. I don't know. And I'm just going to start to fill in some of these leaves. If your black is wet, just go around your black until it dries on any of these polka dots. But we're just going to fill in these green leaves, and we'll use black to outline them. But think about your green leaves. I am going to paint on top of some of these black polka dots. Some of these are a little wet, so I'm just kind of going around it just a touch. But this is just a little patience. And we'll use black paint and white paint to really like allow the leaves to stand out. Right now, they're gonna look like they're gonna blend in with one another. They'll look totally different in just a few minutes. So just trusting the process. I'll get you there, I promise. And this is kind of 2 leaves over here in this space. One of the things I do with my leaf placements is I lean back in my chair and I think about the balance from the left to the right and how high I want my leaves to appear on top. So I may, as I lean back, and maybe I'll start with some of these leaves and I'll do a couple more on the left, but I might add more after if something seems off visually for me. So I'm being open to the evolution of the scene just kind of continuing to change as I need it to. And I always talk about that in these classes. It seems so rudimentary about change and like you changing your mind and adding things, but it's a very natural process of art. Sometimes people think change in art is like unexpected or bad, and it's not. It's a very natural part. So I always like talking about it just to make folks feel a little bit more comfortable of being open to like a new leaf popping up in just 10 minutes or so. So I'm just going to do another leaf kind of over here, just tucked behind the bow, but it's a little bit of green to balance the scene. So for me, this is my little bit of green on the left to balance the composition of the pumpkin. And I may feel like there needs to be like a little leaf right here to help. That's fine. Again, it looks like a mucky kind of green area here. All good. I'm going to lean back in my chair and figure out what else I might want to add and where. I'm inspired to add like a little bit of a green twisty today, like a little bit of a curly Q coming up. Some of you may or may not want to do that. I'm inspired to add just a little bit of fun, like a little bit of a vine just curling. I mean, I can always change what that looks like, but I'm just being a little fun in that regard. Maybe I'll just do another little leaf over here. We're all going to have our own ideas, but getting this green down initially is good. Now your white is starting to dry. So as you're working on your green, we're going to let our green dry, and I'm going to come in and do a second coat of white. So everybody's at their own step. Take your time on whatever you're doing. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of white to really make this bow stand out. There we go. Oh yeah. All right. Putting a little bit more white paint on my plate. And taking a few minutes to make this bow a little extra brighter goes a long way. We didn't do it in the last class. And the bow still came out really nice, but this is that bright white that we want to see from it. And this bright white will also match the background on the top. So just do some nice smooth brush strokes. I did switch back to my big brush for filling in my white bow. If I need to grab a smaller brush for smaller areas, I will. In this bow, I like laughed out loud the last class because I was like, it stands right out, and it will stand right out. That's a part of the look right now, but it won't stand out as much once we put some of the decoration on it. Okay. I'm just going to do a little bit of white paint. I just went right through the middle. That doesn't matter. I'm going to cover it. I'll go in and re-outline that. And if you had any areas that had a little bit of black, oh, that happened to dry. How convenient. Nice thick white paint looks great on top. Almost done. So the steps that we're doing is we're doing a single coat of green on these leaves, letting the leaves dry. I switched back to the bow. I was painting the second coat of the bow. Okay. So my bow is It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. Pretty close. All right, I'm gonna just stick a fork in this bow and call it done because it's pretty close. We're gonna paint on top of it anyways, but that it's now nice and bright, which is what I wanted. So I'm gonna let my bow dry. If you wanted to add any additional highlighting to your pumpkin, you can. You can use a white, you can use a lighter orange. I will show you my painting from Thursday, just to give you something to look at. Now this is the painting from Thursday. I did a black outline on the ridges. I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to keep my pumpkin orange, like all the way. Some people did the black outline in the last class. Some people didn't. Very whimsical. The next thing you can consider as your bow is drying and your green is drying is if you want to put any of these like white textures, like a little bit of extra highlighting, you could. I'll do a little bit of it just to show you. I'm going to keep my pumpkin fairly orange today, but I will show you how to add a little bit of white highlighting if you're interested. And again, I'm being patient, letting my green dry and letting my white dry. And to add this white highlighting, I'm just going to use a small brush, any size. This is a number 2. And it's really kind of in the middle of the panels, but it doesn't matter too much. But you can just do some small, gentle sweeps. And you can use your finger. And this is just to kind of highlight the shape of the pumpkin. So you want these to be like rounded lines where they round, and this will just add a little bit of a highlight on the surface. So as an example, and you can make this as bold or as, and you can do kind of rounded lines. See how I'm rounding like this panel. Totally up to you on how you want to do this, but just, you don't need very much paint. And just do some like rounded lines. They don't have to be full, complete lines. There's a little bit of highlighting. Again, I'm not going to do too much today, but for me it does. Because I have brightened spots on my pumpkin already with the lighter color. If you wanted to bring in like a lighter orange, you could mix a lighter orange and put more lighter orange, blend it into these panels. You can play with that. And again, I just use a small brush with a little bit of water and a little bit of paint and just a little bit of gentle sweeping. That's like a little too much. And you can use your finger to smudge it in. If you don't like something, you can always take a corner of a wet paper towel and kind of like wipe it off. Kind of convenient. Another trick. But what we're going to do is, if you haven't done a second coat for your bow, please do that. But my green is now drying. So I'm going to use my green paint. And if you need to do a second coat of green anywhere, feel free. So I'm just going to use a little bit of green. And I might even do like a little bit of white, just to kind of make like a second tone of green. You could even do a darker green too. But I'm just going to fill in some of these leaves just a little bit more. So maybe if I add a little bit of black to my green, I can come up with a darker green, and I can use this to fill in some of these details. Maybe I outline, maybe I just fill it in a little bit. If you wanted to use a lighter green versus a darker green, you could. I'm probably going to use both, but be playful and see what you come up with. You can use a small brush. I'll bring this a little closer so you can see. I'm just doing some outlining, but really just making sure that my leaves are all filled in. We are going to do black as an outlining color to really, make these stand out. But if you wanted to use any kind of green to fill in some certain parts, I might use a little bit of a lighter green in some areas. If you've been a part of my classes, you know that I like to experiment a little bit, which is good. It's good to experiment, do something outside of the box. So I'm just painting some of these leaves, really just solid in color. The biggest thing for me was is that I could still see through some of these. So for me, I'm just doing a solid coat in some regard. And then I'll come in with the black and make them stand out. So if your leaves are already solid in color, you can just hang tight for a minute. We'll bring our stem to life too, but just making cedars nice and solidified. Just like the bow, we want them to be a solid color before we bring them to life. Okay, cool. So mine are filled in. I can't see the background anymore, at least for the most part. So that's good. My stem needs a little bit of love though. I can still see dots on my stem, so that's not a good thing. I'm gonna do a second coat of my stem. So your stem can be like green. You could do a darker green. You can do anything you want. Make sure your stem is filled in as well. And that was just a little bit of reflection and a mindful art approach on my end, saying, okay, is everything painted before I should move on? Nearly. All right. So our leaves are in pretty good shape. We're letting our bow dry thoughtfully right now. We're going to grab the smallest brush I sent you, and we're going to outline these leaves together with black. So the smallest brush I sent you might be a number 1. It might be a 2/0 fraction brush. And I'm just going to put a little bit of water on the tip of that paintbrush, grab a little bit of black paint, and we're going to do some outlining. So I sometimes like to use, I'll start on the left side of my canvas since I'm a lefty. I'm just going to outline with a nice fine tip these leaves. If you didn't want to outline the whole leaf, you could just pick one side of the leaf to outline. You wanted to put a small line down the middle or down the side, you could. I have these curlicues, so I'm just going to do a little bit of curlicue action just to make these stand out a little bit. I'm just outlining some of my curlicues. Anything else that you want to incorporate into your painting today, I encourage you to do that. Somebody may have space somewhere and you want to incorporate another bow or another pumpkin, feel free to do that. I'm going to outline my stem. So the outlining really helps these objects just come to the foreground a bit more. Remember, the bottom of the stem is a little more narrow. There's our stem coming right on top of the bow. I'm just going to we'll re-outline our bow at the very end with the black paint, but there's the middle of my bow again. I lost it there for a minute. But we're doing great with time, so we'll be done just past 4:30 today, which is perfect. But I'm just doing a little bit of outlining for these leaves. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. You're all doing awesome. We will add a little bit of a white highlight to each of these leaves as well. So we did solid coloring, filling in our leaves. And whenever you paint any object, try to include at least 2 or 3 tones of that color to really bring it to life. I used a little bit of a darker green, and I tried to bring in a little bit of lighter green, but I was just being a little fun today. But the outline of the black creates a little bit of shading. It's a little bit cartoony, kind of to do a full black outline, but that's okay. It's kind of fun to do something a little bit different. It's not incredibly realistic because there's a lot of outlining, but For the really realistic paintings, it takes a lot of detail, a lot of blending. But everybody did awesome. Okay, so my stem is on. If anybody wants to add in like a little bit of depth for your stem, you can kind of add a rounded bow line, a bowing line, like a line that kind of bends down like a smile on the top of your stem. I'm gonna let all of the outlining I did just dry because we're gonna do another detail layer to the leaves and the stem after. But while you have black paint and your small brush in your hand, if anybody wants to add loops to the bottom of the bow, you can. So for the bow on the left and on the right, on the underside, you can kind of bring it out and down a little bit to create like a 3D bow on the bottom. And then I made like a gray last time. Let me see. I made a dark gray to fill in this space. Just mixing a gray. This is just shading on the underside of your bow. So this is a dark gray. It's not black. It's just, it will look dark, but this is just adds a little bit of a shading to your bow. If anybody wants to add a little bit of a thicker area on the underside of your bow, I'll show you how to make your bow 3-dimensional as well. This is a little bit of the 3-dimensional shading. Be a little bit on the underside of the square. And then on the left side, that's the right panel. You can pick one side of the clippings. I'll do the left side of each of these snips. Tails, whatever you want to call them. All right. We're just going to let that dry. And we'll do our bow detail in just a minute. But we're just letting each step dry as we go. Cool. Well, our painting's starting to come together, except we have this bright white bow happening. My bow is still a little wet, so I'm going to make an assumption that your bows are still a little bit wet. So some of the details you can do until your bow is dry, because that's one of our final steps, is just outlining your leaves. If you wanted to put like a small, like little bit of a black line or whatever inside of these leaves, you can add like a little bit of detail. And we are going to add a little bit of white as well. That will happen in just a moment, but this is just, if you wanted to add just a tiny touch of black. There we go. If you wanted to get a little fancy, you can make your stem stand out a little bit more. If you wanted to add like a little brown to your stem, you could put a little bit of orange and mixed with your green, you'll get a brown color. But I'm going to make my stem stand out a little bit more. So right now it's just flat, boring green. On the left and on the right side of the stem on the interior, I'm just adding a little bit of darker contrast just to make it stand out just a touch more. And I might make the middle of the stem a little bit brighter, add a little bit of contrast just to make it look a little bit different. So feel free to play with the texturing of your stem. I'm using like a brownish green just to kind of make the edges a little darker. Maybe I add a little bit more black to it. This is just a little bit of shading. So I'm just making it look a little bit more rounded versus a flat object. So you can play with creating that shaded look, and you can see that helps tremendously. So it's a little bit of black, a little bit of the green, a little bit of the orange. It's a little tricky. I'll bring it a little closer so you can see it. It's not perfect, but it's fun to try. Maybe a little bit will go on top. It's just we're letting a few areas dry, so it's kind of fun just to pop around. And maybe you want your stem to be like overall a little bit lighter. Like you can figure out those details. In the inspiration, it was the same color as everything else, but I'm just adding a little bit of highlighting. So once you are done your black outlining, our bow is still drying. You can take a little bit of white paint with your smallest brush. And you can, on the interior of the black, you can do like a single white line. Maybe start with just one side of the leaf and see if you like that. And I'm being the guinea pig. I'm going to show you what it looks like. That's just a little bit of highlighting with white. I am going to do both sides of the leaf on the interior of the leaf. It just allows you to see more of the leaves. You don't have to do it full, totally rounded. And if you use too much white in areas, just know that you can always cover it up with a little bit of green. So just, I think my goal for you is just try adding a little bit of white. See, I just toned it down a little bit. So a little bit of white. You could even use like a light green if you don't want to use white. You can choose. I'll show you what my palette looks like so you can see what I'm working from. I'm using white paint and a little bit of green right here. Just playing with these blendings, with how these blend together. Ooh, that's kind of a fun neon. All right. So it's just a little bit of brightness coming from these leaves. So I'll let you do as little as much as you want in that regard. All right. And then our bow is probably pretty close here for our final steps. But I will pause. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. You all have been in the zone doing such a good job. We've done a lot of different types of details. We're doing spot on for time, but you can see by adding a little bit of light, a little bit of dark contrast, it allows these elements just to jump off the page. And if you really want your pumpkin to follow suit, you can use a black line and outline each of these rinds. They did that in the picture. I did it in the last class. I'm gonna not do it today just to kind of see how it goes. I might write like welcome on the bottom of this one, which is I could do that right now if I wanted to. If anybody wants to write welcome on the bottom. Again, my white is drying on my bow, so this is a good time for me to do something fancy in the middle on the bottom. If anybody wants to write a message or draw a jack-o'-lantern face on your pumpkin, whatever you want to do, I'm going to do that on the bottom. And I'm grabbing like a long tip brush. What did I grab? I grabbed a number 1, kind of has a long bristle on the top for the word welcome. And maybe someday in my future life, I'll know how to do calligraphy to actually make this look really cool. Until then, I'll dream that I can write nice letters. All right, let's see how this goes. I'm going to be courageous for everyone here. All right, so I'm going to do welcome. This looks like a witch's welcome here. And so I'm just going to be nice. I'm going to go nice and slow. Let's see. My bow is in the way, so I have to go around it. Imagine that. Okay, not bad. I give that a 7 out of 10. If nobody wants to add the word welcome, you do not have to. I did not add this in the last class. Being a little courageous here for a Sunday. This is going to take a couple coats of white paint for it to really stand out. But this is a great consideration if you are letting your bow dry like me. All right. Right. Not bad. And the more white I add to these letters, the more it will stand out. And I can also make these letters 3D too. So I'll make them 3D once I have some white paint on them. Adding a little bit of shading. Just doing a second coat, second or third coat, the white paint.
Did you do the checks on the bow in the last class?
Yes, we did. Yep, we're gonna do the checks and as soon as the bow is dry.
Oh, okay,
That's
good.
our final step. Yep, that's our final step is doing those checkers.
Thanks.
You're welcome. That's coming up next. It helps with my bow is almost dry, so we'll do that in just a minute here. All right. So there's my welcome. It's a very friendly welcome. It is not perfect, but it's fun. So I'll take it, and I will add a little bit of black to that as well, but we'll do the bow first just in case anybody needs to leave soon. All right. So I'm just doing a quick touch up here. Now, knowing the audience, I'm sure half of you did the word welcome, half of you did not do it. And I recognize that some of you may not want to do that, and I respect that. I respect it. And my E needed a little fixing. All right. So we are going to shift to doing the bow next. I have my welcome drawing, which is quite fun. And I will make that, I'll 3Dify that in a minute. But what we're going to do for the big bow is this, quite fun. So I'm going to have you, the last class we made a dark gray and you don't need very much of it. So the bow is going to be dark gray and we're going to basically make a water wash. So you're just going to take just a little bit of black paint, just a tiny smidge, just like that. And you're going to take a little bit of white and you're going to make a dark gray color. The darker, the better here, because some of the bows in the last class were too light and the darker bows looked better. So kind of like if it was like a true black and white pattern. So you could use just black. I'm going to advise against using just black. This is a dark gray and there's not a lot of paint right here, but I don't need a lot of paint, which is important to know because we're going to add a lot of water to my brush. So this is the step, is come up with this dark gray first. Get a little bit on your brush. It just looks wet, basically. There's no goops of gray paint. It's basic. There is some water in this. So you could even put a little bit of water in this area if you wanted to. But for me, I just have a little bit of this dark gray on my brush and it appears to be wet. This is the next step. And again, this is using your big brush that I sent you. You're going to dip your brush in your water cup and you're going to clean half of this off. So just do it like a quick 1-2. And I'm going to wipe off some of the droplets. So now you're going to have a lot of water, not a lot, but enough water on your brush and some of that gray paint still on. And we're going to do vertical stripes on the bow. So I'm going to start at the top and you can kind of bend these stripes a little bit if you want to. Vertical stripes. And I'm not dipping it back in the water cup. I'm just using whatever I have on my brush. I'm going to do the same thing, but down below, but I'm going to change the direction. So I'm going to just make these a little bit arced. And I'm not redipping it in my water cup. I'm using whatever is on this brush. No redipping. Unless you need to, of course, but I'm purposely not doing that. I'm using the pigment that's on my brush. So this is kind of one stitch. Now this bow looks great the way it is. If you want a striped bow and you don't want to do the checkered pattern, hey, call this a striped bow and call it a day, right? But what you could do is go back and once you're done that initial pattern, go back and just get a little bit more water. And then you're going to do the horizontal line. So start on one edge and do that cross hatch across. And this will give you your checkered pattern. Go nice and slow, leave gaps right in between your rows. Always can go back in and get a little bit more water, a little paint. You'll get the sense of what you might need to do. I'm just going to rinse and repeat for each part of the bow so you can create those overlapping lines. And then I'll do a couple of cross hatches here in the middle of the middle of my bow too. Little water, and you can touch up some areas. This area was a little lighter. Maybe you need a little more paint pigment. You can also let it dry. You can also do a touch up. Let me know if anyone needs help, but you all got this. Everyone did such a nice job in the last class. You all are, I'm sure you'll have no problem doing this bow. But let me tell you, the white behind the bow, all these little squares that are white, they make such a big difference to have those stand right out. Now, while folks are kind of working on that and any final details, I am going to put a little bit of a drop shadow behind my welcome letters. And then in just a couple minutes, we'll wrap up. So let me know if you need any help with any finishing touches. You can use your black brush and maybe outline your bow so it really stands out quite a bit. That would be a good thing to do. But if anybody did welcome letters, you can do on the left side of each letter, you can do a thin black line to make it stand out. Using the smallest brush you have. So it's all about layering, all about just knowing you'll get there. I encourage you to take a look at the chat and click on the link. I would love for you to share your work with us after today's class. There's a folder where you can click a plus box and share your work. I'm not doing anything with that work. It's really for all of us just to see how we're all doing and to recognize on how wonderful you each did. If you don't want to share your work, you do not have to, but I highly encourage you to share. We all typically learn from one another and we get inspired, like, oh, she made her flowers this way, or, oh, I love the shape of her or his bow, like whatever. It's really fun being able to reflect on that after class. And even when in a few minutes when we do our show and tell or our flip and reveal as a group, it's always fun to see how everybody's doing. So I'm just outlining these letters, going nice and slow, and then wrap up in just a few minutes, just in case anybody has to go. If there's any questions, if you need anything from me, please do not hesitate to ask. That's why I'm here. All right. So my welcome, I could use another coat of white paint to really make my welcome stand out. I could outline the whole thing in black if I wanted to. I'm just going to let it dry. But any finishing touches, take a look at your leaves. I want you to make sure you're happy with your leaves. I want to make sure that your bow is outlined with black. That's a big one. That's like wow, it makes such a big difference. So for me, I'm just going to do a quick outline. So fun. Outline my bow with black. Very nice. But most importantly, I'm excited to see how everybody's paintings have evolved. I'm sure many of you are doing all those fine touches, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the spotlight on me and take a look in and check in with all of you. I hope you all enjoyed today's class. Thumbs up, 5 out of 10. Cool. Really fun, right? Cool. All right. There's Miss Melody's. Melody, you have the most quaint little bow. I love this. It's like perfectly placed in the middle, perfectly tied. There's Miss Sharon's. Oh, Sharon, your outlining looks amazing on your bow. Your colors are really nice. What'd y'all think about the polka dots? They were fun, right? A nice different change for the background. There's Miss Melinda's. Super cute, Melinda. I know some of you wouldn't do those letters. Do I know you all or what, huh? That's all right. All right. Let's see. There's Rick's. Rick, nice job. I love how you have a lot of greenery on top. I like that. Miss Lisa. Lisa, that's picture perfect. Oh my goodness. Jan, your pumpkin looks like it should be in Wizard of Oz. It looks like there's pigtails and a bow on Dorothy's hat. It is so cute. I love it, Jan. Oh, so fun. We all see each other. We all see these different things. And I love that. There's Claudia's and Kathy. Oh, Kathy, your bow is super cute. You did fun checkers. Nice. And there's Miss Linda's. Linda, those dots, huh? So many dots, Linda. And there's Sharon's. And then there's Sally and Co. All right, there's Sally and Co. Very nice, ladies, gents. And there's Kim and Co. Kim and friend. All right. I hope you all ladies had fun. Hold your paintings up a little higher. Kim, hold them up a little higher. Oh, there we go. Oh, look at those big bows. Awesome. If anyone needs any help, please let me know. Feel free to unmute yourself. But most importantly, I want to encourage you to take your time. You obviously can take as much time as you need to refine these details. I will post a picture of mine on the in the Google folder, so you can see mine, and maybe others will upload as well. If you have any questions or any finishing touches, please let me know. My contact information is on the bottom of this sheet. So this is not marketing. This is like, hey, Megan, if I need something, I'm going to get a hold of you. This is what this is for. So let me know. My phone number is on here, as well as my website. So you can contact me through there if you need to. But I want to thank you for being here. You all work tremendously hard, and you likely, you're taking care of yourself, but you may be helping others as well. So this is a really great retreat for you just to do something for yourself today. And I'm so glad that you were part of the class, and I hope you had a nice time. All right. I hope to see you all again. If you need anything, please let me know. I'll hang out for a few minutes, and feel free to unmute, ask any questions. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Megan. Always fun.
All right, cool. Thanks, Melody. Thank you, Jan and Rick, Kim, Sharon, Miss Kathy. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you, Megan.
You're so welcome, Corinne. Thanks for joining. Lisa, go ahead. Did you have a question? Or are you all set? Oh, there's Lisa's. Oh, Lisa did the words. What does it say? Go away.
This is Michael's.
Go away. So funny. Michael, nice job. I appreciate the humor. Go away. I like that. You could say that for next Halloween, Lisa. Just put that up next to the candy for the kids, Take one and go away. He can write take one above it. That's so funny. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all again for being here, and I hope to see you next month. If you were not able to get into December, send me a note and I'm happy to include you for the Zoom information. And if you need any help with supplies or have questions, don't ever hesitate to ask. But I hope you have a great rest of your night and a good next week. And happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
To each of you.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Take care.
Thanksgiving.
All right.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.